right, U.S. history. It ends today. The Cold War ends today. Not quite the school year. I know many of you are ready for that. Me too. We have a little bit longer, so hang in there with me. But today the Cold War ends. And we have been talking about the Cold War, since after Christmas, maybe? A long time, because it is to be reminded, a 46-year-long conflict. So it has influenced so much of the history that we have learned in the second semester. I mean, just to recap, we've talked about, the beginning of the Cold War with the Truman Doctrine and the Marshall Plan and the Berlin Airlift. Remember when they dropped little parachutes of toys to the kids? We talked about the arms race, and we read some really great Dr. Seuss books with that. We talked about how, parents thought, if my kids can just get under their desk at school, they'll be saved from a nuclear attack, right? How prophetic that they also thought that they could, live in their homes for 3 to 6 months and then be protected. How funny that we're doing that now. Anyways, political commentary. What else did we talk about? We talked about Vietnam, right? We talked about Korea. We talked about how basically we went from fighting this war with cash to fighting it with our military, okay? So today all that comes to an end. It's kind of a big day. Big day, but only 3 slides, so hang in there with me. Last time we talked about Ronald Reagan, right? In the 1980s, you have this rise of conservatism, and part of that is the election of President Reagan. Remember, Reagan is a little bit more aggressive in his approach in the Cold War. He really wants to bring it to an end, which other presidents have wanted to do that too. Kennedy, for instance, wanted to bring it to an end, weren't as successful. Reagan really comes in at the perfect time, and this is what is kind of controversial, and if you love Reagan, close your ears, it might offend you. A lot of people say, Reagan ended the Cold War, and there's definitely reasons for that. I mean, he definitely played a major role. I'm not going to take that away from our boy Reagan. But I would say that equal, maybe even more than Reagan, that first slide, that guy in the first slide, he played a big role too. A man named Mikhail Gorbachev, okay? I would argue that Reagan would not have been as successful at bringing an end to the Cold War if it wasn't for Mikhail Gorbachev. It really was these two men being in power, Reagan and Gorbachev, at the same time that led to the end of the Cold War. So, yes, Reagan, yes, Gorbachev, everyone, okay? Now, Gorbachev, who is he? He gets elected, not elected, he's communist, but he gets elected in 1985. It's been a long day. He gets elected in 1985, and he becomes the premier, or the head of the Soviet Union, okay? Now, he is a different type of premier. He is a reformer at heart, and he kind of, he's pretty wise. I mean, he looks at the way that the Soviet Union is going, and he's like, guys, this isn't good. If we keep doing what we've always been doing, we're going to fall apart. There's just no way that we can compete with capitalism long term if we keep the way that we're going. And so he's very reform-minded. He wants to find a way to make the Soviet Union last by bringing in reforms. Okay, so his heart's in the right place. Now, he does this a lot of different ways. He attacks corruption. He condemns inefficiency within the government. So he tries to improve the government structure from within, but he also tries to loosen up some of the controls that were characteristic of the Communist Party and the Soviet Union. And he does this through 2 different reforms, okay? Definitely reforms that you want to remember. The first one is called perestroika, okay? This is his reform for the economy, right? He's going to loosen up the economy a little bit. Remember, in communism, everything is controlled by the government. You don't make really any money for yourself. You don't have a business. You work for the government. You make what the government tells you to make, how much they tell you to make. Everything is controlled by the government, right? Where capitalism is the exact opposite of that. People can choose to own a business and decide what they make and how much they make, and for the most part, keep their profits, right? Gorbachev decides he's going to give a little bit of that into the communist economy, right? So he's going to influence or bring in some communist or some capitalist influences. So he eases some price controls, okay? He allows for a little bit of private business. He kind of reduces taxes a little bit. He allows for some private ownership, just a little bit, okay? Now, you can imagine the effect that this is going to have, right? If people get a little bit, what do they want, right? Take an inch, want a mile, right? And so the other reform that kind of goes along with this is glasnost, okay? And this means openness. It's translated as openness. And so this reform is really looking at government and the media, because not only was the economy tightly controlled, but everything is tightly controlled. Censorship laws are crazy, right? The Communist Party controls what you read, what you watch on TV, all of the information that's disseminated. Lots of propaganda is constantly being put out into the public to try to control the way people think. Glasnost attempts to loosen that a little bit. So it allows for more expression of culture. It allows for some elements of democracy. Free elections, for instance, for some parts of the Congress system, allows people to vote a little bit. It loosens up the censorship laws, so you can say a little bit more and not get arrested out in public. Okay, now we talked about how perestroika had this effect where you loosen it a little bit and people start thinking, what else can I get? Glasnost, this is just exasperated, right? So now you have these two reforms, and the effect of this is that people start demanding a lot more. They say, this is great, Gorbachev, but this is just a start. We want more. We want more freedom. We want more openness, okay? So he kind of opens up the door for all kinds of revolutions to start in 1989, okay? Now, this is also, again, thinking in terms of America. This is when Reagan is still in power. Reagan is putting a lot of pressure on Gorbachev to listen to his people. Reagan is really supporting all of these revolutions of 1989. You have revolutions all over the place. In Poland, in Czechoslovakia, in Hungary, all parts of Eastern Europe, all of these different satellite states within the Soviet Union, you have all of these revolutions taking place. And again, Reagan is just feeding this constantly, right? He's getting speeches and saying, keep going, keep fighting for rights, keep revolting. He actually goes to Germany and he stands in front of the Berlin Wall at one of their most infamous ports or gates. And I think I had you watch a video today or yesterday kind of depicting this because it was televised worldwide. He goes there and he gives this speech. You can watch it. It's about 30 minutes long. It's worth the watch, in my opinion. Anyway, so he gives this speech. And this is where he says his infamous phrase, right? We all know it. We've all heard it. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall, okay? So that's just one example of Reagan putting pressure on Gorbachev to allow more reforms, but also putting pressure and so giving support to the people who are leading these revolutions, right? They know they have America's support, okay? And it works. November 10th, 1989, the Berlin Wall opens. East Germany, the government, it starts taking down the Berlin Wall. It happens in segments. Again, on one of the videos that I have you guys watch, you can just see people pouring over the wall for the first time in decades. It's just an amazing thing to watch. And once this happened, it prompts more reforms. People start giving in more to these revolutionary groups. And so it's just chipping away over time. By the time we get to July of 1990, Gorbachev and the Chancellor of West Germany, he's a man named Kohl, Chancellor Kohl, they've signed an agreement to actually unify Germany under the West German government. And that unification is completed just a few months later, October 1990. Germany is one again, and it's the Germany that we know today. It's a democracy. All of the laws and government structure that dictated and kind of guided West Germany is now true of the entire country. So we don't have a West and East anymore. We just have one Germany like we do today, and they're a democracy. That happens in October of 1990. Now, once Germany unifies, everything just kind of like hyperdrive comes to an end. The Cold War comes to a very quick end after Germany is unified. That's kind of like the biggest domino to fall in all of this. It's like the revolutions of 1989 and then Germany, and then everything else just kind of falls after that. Gorbachev starts asking for a new constitution. He kind of abolishes Soviet control over a lot of the politics and power in different parts of the Soviet Union. One of the bigger dominoes that falls that kind of leads to the very end is that you get a new leader actually in Russia, the country that started it all. A guy named Boris Yeltsin comes to power in May in 1990. And his message is very unique. It's not, we need to watch out for the Soviet Union. It's, we need to watch out for Russia. We need to let these Soviet states go. We need to get rid of the Communist Party and the Soviet Union. And we need to start focusing on just Russia and making Russia great. Okay? So Russians, who before wanted this whole empire, the Soviet Union, they're now ditching that idea and throwing their support to Yeltsin. and saying, no, we need to focus here in Russia. We can't be worrying about this big empire, the Soviet Union, which is obviously falling apart. Okay, and so when Yeltsin comes to power in Russia, Russia basically decides we are going to pull out. Now, Russia's the one that started it all. They have the most power. They were holding the Soviet Union together, controlling all of those little Eastern European states. So once Russia's gone, the whole thing falls apart. Now, there is one more last stand in August of 1991. You have the Communist Party that tries to stage a coup and kick out Gorbachev. But since Russians don't back it, Russians don't want it anymore. They've thrown their support to Yeltsin, not the Communist Party. And so that coup doesn't work. And again, the whole thing just falls apart. The Communist Party basically dissolves. So by December of 1991, the Soviet Union is over. It's all kind of crumbled. You have Russia, and now you have all these new independent Eastern European states. And the president at that time, Reagan is no longer president. Now you have George H.W. Bush, which we're going to talk more about on Friday. He's the president in the early 1990s. In 1992, it's actually George H.W. Bush and Yeltsin who signed an agreement basically pledging to be friends and pledging their cooperation with one another. Okay, so Russia and the United States, as of today, are friends. We still have our differences, and you may have heard about them, especially recently. We're always kind of going back and forth with Russia. But since 1992 and that agreement, we've pledged our friendship and cooperation with Russia. That really signals the end of the Cold War, because not only is the Soviet Union broke up, but the two great powers that were feuding for so long and competing over all of these different areas, right? Space and arms and military might, and which system is better, capitalism or communism, they are now pledging their cooperation with one another and their friendship. And who is the winner, right? Who comes out? If the whole thing was a big competition to decide which system is better, which one wins? Well, the U.S. is still standing with capitalism and democracy. The Soviet Union has fallen apart, okay? So at the end of the Cold War, it's really capitalism that emerges as the dominant, better system in the world. That means that we now have one global superpower, right? After World War II, the Europeans are rebuilding, right? And so in the 40s and 50s, you had two world superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union. And it stayed that way all the way until the 90s. But now that the Cold War is over, the Soviet Union's dissolved, that's out for the count. Now you just have one world superpower, the United States, in the 1990s, okay? And it's largely stayed that way today. You do have people who will say the U.S. is no longer the global superpower, but when you're looking at the traditional ways of measuring this sort of thing, wealth, military might, all kinds of different categories, for the most part, most will agree that the United States is still considered to be the dominant superpower in the world today, and that they're largely unrivaled by anybody else that's out there in, again, those categories that we usually look to: political stability, wealth, military might, technology, those types of things. And that's really a result, again, of the end of the Cold War and the dissolving of the Soviet Union. The U.S. emerges as kind of the last man standing and remains that way today. So this is it, you guys. One more lecture. Hang in there with me. We will finish up the year with the 1990s and 2000s on Friday. Wash your hands, and I'll see you.